Welcome one and all to another day here at the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola, and joining us in new blonde form, Jessica Burbank. Welcome back to the program.
Who is she? Hi John, good to see you.
Who is she?
Your hair's always changing, my hair's always changing. We gotta keep people on their toes.
I know, exactly. Mine changes a lot because mine grows percentage-wise way more. But anyway, I want to assure everyone that despite her hair color being different, her rabid obsession with monetary policy continues. So
it will never change.
No, it will not. We're gonna be talking about inflation. We're gonna be talking about debt. We're gonna be talking about who exactly is the big winner in the debt ceiling raise deal, blah, blah, blah. So we've got all that for you. We've got some apparently really important developments in the classified documents case, really important developments in the education plans for Meghan McCain's kids that'll be coming up in the aftermath. So a lot to talk about as we launch into the next phase of the presidential race. Some of the comments that are coming towards new candidates are particularly disgusting, so that'll be fun. And we're also entering into Pride Month, so buckle up everyone, it's gonna be a rough one. Also, we're gonna be doing a Pride special coming up right after the Young Turks later on today. I'm lucky enough to be involved in the first half hour of it. Gonna be joined by some awesome guests. And then Adrian's gonna be taking over for the second half. So everyone definitely prepare for that. And along the way, if you wanna send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, Jessica and I will respond as we go. But with all that said, Jessica, you ready to start the show?
Be gay, do crime, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about this. Federal prosecutors who are investigating Donald Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents, what you or I might call massive theft, apparently have a new piece of evidence that is considered to be maybe the single most important piece of evidence in this year-long investigation. It has to do with a recording that they now have of Donald Trump from mid-2021, when notably he was not president, talking about a sensitive military document that he had at that point. You could hear during the tape, apparently the crumpling of paper. It's not clear if that's the document, but he is describing it to a number of people, all of whom have no ability or clearance whatsoever to be hearing about classified documents. And that's not even the worst part of it just yet. So to give you a little bit of context, this happens in July of 2021. He's apparently in a meeting with a number of people who are helping to produce a biography of Mark Meadows at that point, although Mark Meadows apparently was not there. That is important for legal reasons, I suppose, for Mark Meadows. Anyway, it's a memoir or something about his time in the White House. Anyway, in the recording, which multiple people have now confirmed that they've heard, Mr. Trump suggested that he knew the document was secret and had not declassified it, according to one person. On the recording, his comments suggest that he would like to share the information, but he's aware of limitations on his ability post-presidency to declassify records. And that is important for a number of different reasons. It shouldn't be important for any of these reasons. The crime is super clear and has been from the very beginning. But all of this is about motivations and state of mind and what did he know and when did he know it and procedures and all of that. So if we take all of that nonsense as a given and very, very important, then here is why this recording matters. So in the video or in the audio, he apparently makes clear that he should have declassified it, but didn't. So at that point, it is not declassified. This is months after he was president. This is going to be very important for videos that we're going to show you in just a little bit. It also shows that he understands that there is a process to declassify documents because notably, he does not say, I should have declassified it. Hold up a sec. Done. That didn't happen. He knows there's a process. It's a process that he hadn't gone through. And he also knows that the people he's talking to don't have clearance to hear this. It basically has to do with Iran and national security. He was apparently using this document as a way to smear Mark Milley or something like that. But there's one even more important detail revealed in this recording. We'll get to that in a second. But Jessica, what do you think about what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I love that Trump is like, well, the document became declassified when I took it automatically. And it's like, that's a legal term. It's not like I showed other people, so I guess it's no longer classified. Like, that's not how that works. And I think he knows that very well. Does his base know that? Maybe not. They're like, yeah, he showed other people, so I guess it's no longer classified. The secret's out. It's absurd.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, he's saying in the thing, it's still classified. He's the one that says that, which is important.
My inner circle, just the boys saw it. It's fine.
Exactly. It's just for the boys. Here's the thing, though. While all of this looks bad for Trump and helps Jack Smith and the special counsel's office, that whole investigation, because it makes clear that he knew full well that the documents that he was holding on to, that NARA and others were trying to get, were still classified. All of that would be damning enough. The most important part of this is the actual content of the document, because it does have to do with national security, and that is important over and above everything else that we've talked about. So the reason is because of the Espionage Act, which has occasionally been referenced in discussions around this investigation, but this makes clear why the Espionage Act kind of has to be an important part of this investigation going forward. Notably, because the Espionage Act makes no reference to whether a document has been deemed classified. Instead, it makes it a crime to retain without authorization documents related to the national defense that could be used to harm the United States or aid a foreign adversary. So, while it is certainly noteworthy that he is clear that the document is classified at the time that he's waving it around and talking about it with other people and possessing it, it's also irrelevant whether it's classified. Even if he had mentally declassified it or gone through the actual process as president of declassifying it, doesn't matter, he can't have it. Doesn't matter at that point. It's not the classification status that matters, it's the content that matters. And so, just from like looking at the facts that have been laid out here, there is seemingly no out to charges under the Espionage Act. However, we live in the country that we live in with the political system that we live in and the DOJ that we have, and Jack Smith, who I keep hearing is a super important prosecutor and is super hard-nosed and tough and everything, but that hasn't stopped Donald Trump from getting away with all sorts of different crimes in the past. So I don't know, it seems cut and dry, Jessica, but what do you think? Do you expect that we're gonna see charges under the Espionage Act coming out of this?
I mean, I would like to. I haven't been hopeful about this DOJ since Merrick Garland decided he's not gonna prosecute Donald Trump for charges of inciting an insurrection. That should have been Merrick Garland's business the first week in office. And I won't shut up about how he waited until Donald Trump announced his run for president in 2024 to say, well, now if I went after him, it would be like political, so I can't. And it's not about that. He committed a crime. Insurrection is a very serious crime. So is espionage. It's a huge risk for our country to have these documents at Mar-a-Lago where he has all of these people as frequent visitors from all around the world. Who knows what kind of information he was selling for money when we have people like Giuliani selling pardons? I mean, he could have very easily been selling classified information to foreign adversaries.
Yeah, I've always, I don't rule out the possibility that he could do that. He's incredibly petty. I will refer everyone to his digital trading cards. But I also, I don't mentally need that to get to this is a big issue.
Yeah.
And look, you referenced, the insurrection. I would still say, even with the knowledge of what's in the documents, I don't rank this as serious a crime as leading the insurrection, what happened in Fulton County, those sorts of things. But if it's about missile defense programs and nuclear programs, then this is not just hey, it's a memento. This is actually serious. He's not supposed to have that stuff. Whether he's selling it or not, he's telling people about it. He has always been surrounded by people who are working for other countries as unregistered agents of foreign powers. It is beyond irresponsible. And so, yeah, there's gotta be some charges, man. There just has to be.
It's between his takeout menus, it's pizza, Chinese food, the nuclear codes that I'm gonna give to Iran. It's just in his stuff at his place. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's those are serious documents and you've got them smeared with duck sauce. Come on, man. Be responsible. Anyway, with that said, I haven't yet seen Trump actually responding about this big story. I've been loading up the Truth Social and I haven't seen anything yet, but there are others working for him who have responded. So why don't we jump into a little bit of what Jim Trusty, his lawyer, has had to say, starting with this.
These tapes would indicate that former President Trump knew that the documents that he had were classified. Does that not make his statements about blanket declassification and some statements by his representatives, wouldn't that make those lies?
Yeah, I'm not going to dignify the DOJ leak. What I will tell you is this. When you are, but this is addressing
you just don't want to address the substance.
Well, it'd also be nice if you let me answer. So let me just try to answer because I am trying to be responsive, but I'm not going to bite on a leak campaign and try the case in the media. What I will tell you is there is no doubt that as commander in chief, and when the president left Washington, D.C. for Mar-a-Lago, he was actually still president. When he left for Mar-a-Lago with boxes of documents that other people packed for him that he brought, he was the commander in chief. There is no doubt that he has the constitutional authority as commander in chief to declassify. It does not have to go through some sort of bureaucratic process to be declassified.
But wouldn't it be very easy to simply prove that he just declassified them? Because even though he doesn't have to go through a process, he does have to decide that it's been done. Did he tell anyone?
Yes.
And can you prove it?
Sure, but we're not going to try.
Did he declassify this document that we're referring to?
We're not going to try the case leak by leak.
See, Abby Phillips, you're asking me a lot of questions that make me really uncomfortable. And if I have to defend him, that's sort of my job. But if I do that, I'll be lying. And I really want to be able to continue to do my job after Trump goes to jail. So I'm not going to dignify that by responding to it. I don't like that. While those are great follow-up questions by Abby Phillips, I don't like her saying he doesn't have to go through a process. Yes, he does. What are you talking about? Why are you ceding that to Jim Trusty? He definitely has to go through a process, but also it's irrelevant because he says on the tape he hasn't gone through that process. He didn't go through the process. He didn't telepathically declassify the documents. Months after he was no longer president, he said that they were classified. So I understand why Jim Trusty doesn't want to be pinned down on this and keeps evading and neo-dodging around the questions and everything. But it's super clear what's actually going on. And I wish that they would do a little bit better of a job of making sure that people knew what was actually happening. Jessica, what do you think?
I agree. I wish these guys didn't make so much sense. Like what Jim Trusty says there would make sense to the average person. It's like, okay, if Donald Trump had the power to declassify the documents and he just didn't like sign the paper or whatever, and he just took them with him, like what's the big deal if he didn't just say, I'm declassifying them before taking them? The big deal is that Donald Trump doesn't know the sensitive nature of those documents. He probably doesn't even know the contents of all of those documents. And the process of declassifying them would involve meeting with people who know what's in there and what the consequences of declassifying them for national security might be. We don't know the extent of what contents are in those documents, and neither does Donald Trump. So should he be declassifying them? He doesn't even know the consequences of that. That's why there's a process there. Like, I don't like bureaucracy either. I think we waste a lot of resources in some aspects of our bureaucracy, but this seems like a process that is actually very necessary.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, to the extent that it can be strengthened, I think coming out of this, whether it's just the Trump stuff or even finding out that Mike Pence had some documents and Biden had some documents, not documents that they, tried for months and months and months to keep against the rules. But either way, let's be much clearer about that sort of thing. It clearly is important. Also, can we just note the irony of Donald Trump being hounded for months during an investigation into him going way beyond the law to maintain possession of these documents, the exact sort of documents that he spent the 4 years that he was president doing everything he could to not read. Like the dude never wanted to see any of this stuff. And then as soon as he's on the way out, it's all he wants. It's like someone who only appreciates their partner when the threat of breaking up is all of a sudden there. Now you appreciate things about them. Dude, just spend some time with the documents while you're president, put a ring on it. Anyway, we have more from Jim Trusty, specifically on why would he maintain possession of these sorts of documents having to do with foreign adversaries and national security.
Why would former President Trump have a document that seems to pertain to military plans regarding a very significant US adversary, have them in his possession and be discussing them with people who don't have an appropriate clearance, whether he declassified them or not? Why would he do that?
You know what's really fascinating about the leak is DOJ is trying to justify this persecution of the current administration's leading opposition by saying, oh my God, he had these sensitive materials that he shouldn't have had. And then they leak to you guys vivid details of a document that they say is classified. I mean, they can't have their cake and eat it too.
To be fair, these are not vivid. These are not vivid. To be fair, these are not vivid details of the document. Trump is on the video describing the contents of this document to people, biographers of his former chief of staff. So he's the one doing the describing.
That is, look, I get that Jim Trusty has a difficult job to do. Being Trump's lawyer is not easy. That's why so few people actually want to do it. Also because he doesn't pay. So I get why you might be forced to come out with some really weak arguments, but hey, if him talking about the docs is so bad, then why are you guys talking about them is not the legal defense that you think it is. I've talked about the documents on this show. Is that actionable information, what I've revealed? Are you gonna be able to craft like a military strategy to take out Iran based on what I've said or what Abby Phillips said? No, it's ridiculous. It's beneath everyone watching that video. Jim Trusty should know better, but what he also knows is his job is to go on the news so that the Trump team can say, look, we're not hiding or anything. We sent out Jim Trusty, but not actually say anything. Just do what you can to not get pinned down and hope that we can get through this thing. But that is maybe a PR defense. It's not actually a defense against the investigation.
Jim Trusty's just like, let them eat cake. Let's throw the documents off the roof of the building and call it a day. He's so done. I really want to know how Trump picked Jim Trusty as the lawyer. He was just like, okay, his last name is Trusty. Is he trusty? Good enough for me. Like that's how the conversation probably went. He's a good communicator, and that's really bad when someone who's Trump's attorney is a good communicator. But he really makes it seem like it's no big deal. And actually, the media are the bad guys because they told you about what's in the documents. We just had them in Mar-a-Lago. Don't worry about what foreign leaders of countries that might not be friendly to us saw them. The media leaked some stuff about what might be in those documents. So you guys are actually the bad guys. The way he flips the narrative is dangerous for him to be Trump's attorney. I hate it when anyone capable is around that man.
Yeah, I guess, but again, like the capability that you're identifying might serve him well in the context of an interview with Abby Phillips. That does not necessarily mean it's going to serve him well in a courtroom when Jack Smith is on the other side of the room. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it will.
Depends on our judge.
100%. Just for funsies, let's play one more video. This is Jim Trusty, but on with Caitlin Collins. Take a look at this.
You're making the argument right now that by the time he was on the ground in Florida, after he left Washington, that is when he declassified all of these documents that he took with him.
No. I'm saying the documents he brought with him are effectively declassified and personalized under the Presidential Record Act. We're talking about constitutional authority under the Constitution to declassify. If he wants to take stuff with him and say, anything I take with me is declassified, if he wants to take stuff and say, anything I read at night is declassified, that was absolutely his right as president. And the Presidential Records Act makes it clear that we don't even care about classified information. It is a statutory scheme that deals with presidential or personal only.
Jim, if this was declassified, then why are we told that he's on this tape basically telling the people in the room that he can't share it with them?
You are told by DOJ or FBI or whoever filtered that to you anything they can think of to justify a persecution.
But Jim,
Caitlin, I'm telling you, this is, they had rumors out yesterday. There's going to be one every day.
Okay, so look, we haven't heard the actual tape. It is possible, difficult to imagine, but it's possible that the tape does not say what many sources are saying that it says. It is possible that it does not reveal that Trump says that the documents were classified at that point. But notably, Jim Trusty is not saying that that's not what the tapes play there. He's doing a little of diversion. He's saying they'll tell you whatever they need to justify their persecution. He doesn't say that what they're telling you is false. He doesn't say that Trump didn't say that. He starts to go to that like automatic declassification thing, which by the way, if you were following Jim Trusty's path through the media yesterday, he was very much earlier in the day talking about like very specific timelines of when Trump's plane landed at Mar-a-Lago, whether he was still president when he was in Florida. He was laying out that theoretically, just because Trump had left DC without the documents being declassified doesn't mean that he couldn't have done it when he was in the air or when he landed. That all falls apart. And so by the time you see him on with Caitlin Collins there, he's back to automatic declassification and does not want to have to respond to that very difficult question of if that's the case, if he can just do it whenever he wants, which it's not the case, then why is he describing the documents as classified? That is just a really difficult thing to deal with if you know that the facts aren't on your side. Any final thoughts, Jessica?
I love that it's an attorney or a lawyer's job to interpret the law. And what Jim Trusty said to Caitlin Collins on CNN there was, the Presidential Records Act says, we don't even care about classified information. Is that your interpretation of what the Presidential Records Act says? Because that is absolutely insane. If they were declassified, why are you making the case we don't care about classified information? Even if they were classified, doesn't matter to us. That's what the Presidential Record Act says. Makes sense. Okay, thank you, Jim.
100%. By the way, I'm gonna end with this. It would be one thing if Trump and his defender's position was, any president, anytime he wants, if he takes a document, it's declassified. That would be ridiculous. It's not how the system actually works, but at least it would be consistent. But the thing that I've always found to be the most amazing is the having your cake and eating it too-ishness of saying Trump isn't in trouble because everything he had was automatically declassified, but somehow Biden and Obama are still in trouble. Why? I don't know, because they want to have it both ways. According to their logic, which isn't true, Obama can take whatever he wants, but they want Trump to be innocent, but they also want Obama to be guilty. So they're reversing the logic in the case of the other president. It doesn't make any sense. It's not gonna hold up in court. This isn't looking good for Trump, but it's still America, it's still the DOJ. God knows what Merrick Garland will do.
Let them eat and have cake, John.
Exactly, that is after all what cakes are for. Anyway, Eating and having. Take a picture. That way you'll have it forever in digital form. Okay, with that said, we are going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about this debt deal that they actually made happen. Who was the actual winner? We'll try to figure it out after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what is going on out there. I want to remind you all, by the way, that our Pride special is going to be happening later on today, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Daniel Francesi is going to be joining me, Miranda Scholl, Zoe Zephyr. I was able to do a sit-down interview yesterday. We're going to be playing that live on the program as well. Marissa Matthews, Betty Carollo, Maybe a Girl. It's going to be awesome. Hope that you all join us for that. Now, Tyler Hackner is gifted a membership. Thank you, Tyler, as always. Brian Neal, member for 8 months, says, has Jessica returned to take her show back? Love from Scotland all.
The coup.
I get
Always
it.
plotting.
The coup continues. Julia says, guesses on how many anti-LGBT laws Republicans passed during Pride Month? 30, I don't know. They're certainly gonna introduce a lot. I played on the pre-show, Ben Shapiro this morning launched us into Pride Month with this argument for why any society that's not based on heterosexual relationships is definitionally doomed to collapse. As I pointed out, he says it's definitionally doomed to collapse so that he doesn't have to actually prove why that would be the case. It's convenient out for him as an intellectual gladiator. But anyway, all of them are like planting their flag in the first day of Pride Month as I'm gonna be the most hateful a-hole in the country. So we've got worse examples of that actually coming up later on the program. Okay, Nov 1775 Jim says in a super chat, he doesn't want to try the case in the media. Trump breathes through trying his lies in the media. What a load of crap. Pepperoni and Mochi Dragon says hi. Say hello to them as well. Yeah, exactly. Look, I get why the lawyer would perhaps have a different standard for the things he says in public than Donald Trump on social media. But yeah, it is interesting when they finally draw the line. The Centaur says, why does Jessica have an iPod mini and a pot behind her? Do you have an iPod mini?
It's a cactus.
It's a cactus. Were they talking about an iHome? Isn't that like a circular thing? It's a cactus. It's not technology.
It's a real plant that I keep alive.
Yeah, is Siri in that plant?
Maybe.
Anyway, Flutterfly, member for 4 months, says, woohoo, I'm a real dragon again and glad to have you. Thank you for being here. Okay, Dylan Doe says, smash that like button so John can dye his hair blonde too.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't think we need that.
How many likes, John?
No, back in high school, I once had like kind of bleached hair and it was a bad experience for a number of different reasons. The actual bleached hair was the least of my problems at that point, but it wasn't helpful. Anyway, Kide says, whenever John uses a D&D spell in news context, I'll thank him with a super chat. Here's for the accidental use of aid. Thank you. You're giving me a lot of charity there. The Dark Phoenix says, a year already and with Jessica on, nice. Also, John, her hair looks bomb. You could learn a thing or two. Thanks.
I miss John's like greaser era.
I could grease this if necessary. I'll be right back.
There we go.
Anyway, let's see. Rebel Phoenix says, John, did you make it to a temple yet in tears? Yes, I have defeated the Wind Temple, actually. There was a lot of pressure, Jessica, for me to play Tears of the Kingdom, and I said that I shouldn't because I'm worried that it would consume too much time, and I was proven right in that. But anyway, I don't know how much of a gamer you are.
Did you Twitch it?
I did not Twitch it, actually. I real-lifed it, but that was it.
You're just in the moment.
Just in the moment. But anyway, I should have Twitched it. Anyway, that game though, you just do so much just like doing nothing, walking around. I'm not sure how good of a Twitch game it would actually be, but anyway, I'm sure some people get a lot of views.
With your commentary, John, it'd be great.
We'll see. Thank you for the vote of confidence. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, let's jump into some seemingly important domestic political news. Against all odds, I guess, the debt deal has happened. It's gone through, overwhelmingly passed by the House, at least. We'll see what ends up happening with the Senate, but President Biden, Kevin McCarthy appear to have gotten something like what they wanted. The vote was 314 to 117, not particularly close, obviously. And it did happen just a few days before supposedly we were about to hit the debt ceiling. 149 Republicans, 165 Democrats backed the bill. So actually more support from Democrats than Republicans, despite the fact that it is a Republican speaker. Interesting. Anyway, Kevin McCarthy greeted this saying, tonight we all made history because this is the biggest cut in savings this Congress has ever voted for. He said, by the way, that he'll be pushing for more cuts. We'll actually be talking about that in a little bit. Joe Biden says this agreement is good news for the American people and the American economy. Well, we've already, gone in depth into what was included in that final deal. If you haven't been paying attention to politics this week, though, I'll remind you that amongst other things, including an overall cut for the next 2 years to the federal government, it includes stricter work requirements for food stamps, clawing back funding for IRS enforcement, $10 billion, and unspent coronavirus relief money, $30 billion, speeds the permitting of new energy projects, and officially ends Mr. Biden's student loan repayment freeze. And with all of the terrible things that were included that don't even have to do with the budget, as well as the fact that it cuts the budget over the next 2 years, Jessica, it is amazing that so many Republicans are frustrated by this because it seems really bad. What do you think?
I think it's up for debate right now. If we should have a government at all, like that's really what's at the heart of this. The idea that we should defund public programs should sound ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. If John and I have children who need to go to school and we say, all right, let's hire a teacher, let's pool our resources, get our dollars together, we're gonna hire someone to teach our kid. That wouldn't be a great quality of education, but maybe if we got everyone in the block to pool their resources together, we could hire a few teachers, maybe build a space for them to do school in. But if we got the whole city to do that, we'd have a much better situation. That's what the government's for, pooling our resources together so we can have things that the market's not going to provide at the same level or the same price, things that we really value and we want and need. The government organizes how we spend public resources to get public goods, things we value, like education for our kids' schools, roads to drive on. Usually it's healthcare now for us, it's healthcare for people who are earning below a certain amount, and Medicare for people who are older, Social Security, retirement, all of these things. That's what the budget, the public budget or the deficit, that's what that's paying for. The deficit or the public debt is a record of how many dollars we've put into the economy that haven't been taxed back out yet. And we usually do that by issuing bonds. And so what's happened is we've had this thing called the debt ceiling that's been raised 78 separate times since 1960. And what it originally was the way it worked was separate accounts would be credited. So like the Department of Education would get its own account, the DOJ, Pentagon, whatever. They wanted to put that all together into one record. And so they would make a note of how much debt would be acquired. And now it's turned into this thing of they've made it seem like this arbitrary number that's selected is a number we can't go past because of some consequences. That's not true. Like there's no actual consequences of us surpassing the debt ceiling. Only 2 countries, I'm pretty sure, in the world have a debt limit. It's just unnecessary. We have to add dollars into the economy to put real productive resources to use. There are a lot of things that banks, who also are the only other source of money entering the economy, they just won't invest in. It's not profitable for a bank to give a loan to a business person so that elderly people can receive care. Just not a profitable business enterprise. So if you're a banker or someone who is responsible for loaning out money on behalf of the bank, you need to give that money to whatever is the highest return on investment. That's your directive. So we need dollars to enter the economy to put real productive resources to use to all of those things that banks aren't incentivized to. We need public spending for the economy to function. And they're defunding it on purpose because they want people to be so desperate to sell their labor for such a low wage and work for so many hours, because that means profits will be high for the businesses that a lot of our members of Congress have stock in.
Yeah. Or at the very least, their donations come from.
Yeah.
Either from the individuals who have stock in them or own them, or the actual corporations themselves. Mm-hmm. And everything that you said about the debt ceiling makes perfect sense. Especially some of it in terms of raw theory. The idea that it makes no sense makes sense in raw theory, but it does make sense to have this fight every year if you want to sort of have a built-in mechanism to constantly cause a crisis where everyone fears that the government is about to fall apart. And so any kind of cuts that are proposed are justified if that's what it takes to get us to a debt ceiling increase. Because in your example about why exactly it is that we pool our resources as a society so that we can get more out of it, that does make sense for most people. But if you don't need a lot of that stuff, sure, you need the roads and you don't want bandits to be rampaging through the town. But beyond that, you don't need aid in terms of food or housing or whatever because you're already wealthy. Well, then all of that seems needless. Why exactly am I funding that? That's where, of course, the issue falls apart. And that's why we have people who want the government to only function at a minimal level. It's because they don't need that extra aid and they would very much not like to be taxed if that's what's required to provide it for other people that they don't give a damn about.
Yeah, and a self-fulfilling prophecy at that, right? Because if we defund education, reduce the quality of education, now maybe people won't question when we say we're gonna default on our obligations as the US government, which creates the dollars and issues the currency. If anybody's not gonna default on their obligation, it's the people who can press a button and make dollars exist with simply pressing a button.
Yeah, 100%. I need to get that ability, damn it. Yeah. Anyway, with that said, I think we are running a little bit low on time. So why don't we get ready for our second video? We're gonna jump right to the Kevin McCarthy stuff, and I'll actually set that up. Kevin McCarthy is both feeling victorious over the fact that the debt deal happened, but still in a little bit of trouble. There are some Republicans of the Freedom Caucus saying that the fact that he cut this deal with Biden is gonna be all the reason necessary for them to kick his butt out of the speakership and replace him with, I don't know, Marjorie Greene or something. Although notably, she voted for the deal too. Maybe they can go to Boebert. She didn't vote for it. She didn't vote at all. She actually missed the vote. She didn't make it to the building in time. But anyway, don't let this lead you to believe that there aren't worse cuts a coming. Kevin McCarthy is actually already previewing those. Take a look.
Now we're cutting. And you know what? I'm gonna make some people uncomfortable by doing that, but I'm not gonna give up on the American people. And this isn't the end. This doesn't solve all the problems. This is the first step. I'm gonna announce a commission coming forward from the speaker, from bipartisan on both sides of the aisle. We only got to look at 11% of the budget to find these cuts. We have to look at the entire budget. The Congress has done this before.
Why didn't you see the whole budget?
Because the president walled off all the others. The majority driver of the budget is mandatory spending. It's Medicare, Social Security, interest on the debt. So you only have 11% to look at this budget.
So that right there shouldn't surprise anyone. Of course, they're gonna be coming for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They wanna cut those things because the only people in this country that they actually care about don't need those things as much. Sure, they benefit from it. Every rich person in the country gets Social Security when they come of age, but they don't need it and they'd prefer that it didn't exist if that allowed their taxes to be lower. So Kevin McCarthy coming for those things shouldn't be a surprise. Establishment Republicans are always going to do that. But you also shouldn't be surprised by the way that that was spun by, that was Harris Faulkner, right? Where she was like, he wouldn't let you see it. He wouldn't let you see Social Security. What do you think C means in this context? It means cut. It's not like he just wanted to look through the rolls. Oh, that is the Social Security spending. He wanted to cut it. So she's supposed to make it seem to their viewers that the idea that we should be discussing cutting Social Security and Medicare is so obviously reasonable that it's ridiculous and a shame that they didn't let you do that. So all of you conservatives, many of which watching Fox News are actually poor and rely on Social Security or Medicare, or at the very least will eventually, you are being trained to accept a cut in those programs. You're being trained by people like Kevin McCarthy, who is supported by Donald Trump after all. So establishment and the supposed outsider wing of the Republicans are in lockstep on this, and by Fox News as well. The cuts are coming, or at the very least, the attempt to do the cuts, and they're priming their audience to be okay with it. Jessica, what do you think?
Kevin McCarthy is the most absurd human being. So cutting Social Security and Medicare is so unpopular. Those are like the two most popular public programs we have in the United States. McCarthy's plan right now is just defund grandparents. Like that's what we should be calling this, because that's what it is. He says, what I'm gonna do is gonna make some people uncomfortable. You're going to make people's grandparents homeless. I guess like many things in 2023, it's a spectrum of what is uncomfortable. But seriously, it is on the extreme of the spectrum. People will not be able to feed themselves. They already can't on current Social Security benefits. And when you talk about Medicare, people are already denied necessary care, not receiving quality care under Medicare. Like, people will die, people will be homeless, people will not be able to feed themselves. Not just people, but some of our most vulnerable people, old people, our grandparents. And so it's ridiculous that this is his plan, and he's framing it like, I'm gonna stick with the American people, I'm gonna fight for you, I'm gonna make this right. That's like literally setting a house on fire and being like, all right, everybody, we've got to move. I have this new house. It's smaller and decrepit, but I got you this house to replace the one that we can't live in anymore. It's like, we can't live in that because you set it on fire. You can't say, I'm making a non-problem a problem. And then by fixing it, I'm actually making more problems. That's really what's going on here by him saying we've got to cut spending and going after programs that people really rely on.
Yeah, it would be bad enough if he was doing the thing where he's like, this is what's fiscally responsible. We just can't have these luxuries like grandma having a sandwich or grandpa not freezing to death in his lazy boy. Those are luxuries, we can't afford them anymore, so I'm gonna be responsible. That would be bad enough. But what he's doing is he's going into your grandparents' house, he's rooting through the fridge, he's taking their blankets and then saying, I'll never stop fighting for you as I take all of your stuff. Don't pitch yourself to be the hero as you're leading them towards death. That's insane. But that's what he was doing. And there was no pushback from Harris Faulkner on that. She didn't point out, oh, by the way, the stuff that you're proposing is wildly unpopular. In a recent AP NORC poll, 79% were opposed to reducing the size of Social Security benefits, which raising the retirement age would be a reduction of benefits if you don't get paid them for 3 additional years. That is a significant cut in your benefits. 67% are against raising monthly premiums for Medicare. By the way, 58% of the country supports the idea of increasing taxes on households making over $400,000 a year, specifically to pay for Medicare. And I am sure that Harris Faulkner has seen these polls. Kevin McCarthy has seen these polls, but they don't care because the majority of the country is not who they've been sent to Washington or New York City to represent. And so I have no doubt that they're going to be proposing those cuts. That's a given. So the question is going to be, will the Democrats play ball on that? And that is where I start to get really worried.
Yeah, and he has said nothing of cutting the $858 billion going to the Pentagon. The Pentagon, which hasn't passed an audit in 5 years. So what are you gonna do? You're literally giving money without question to the guy that when you gave it to him, you were like, all right, here's $858 billion. Then you're like, so what did you spend that on, that money that I gave you for defense? And they're like, I don't really remember. You're gonna keep giving that guy money? But when you gave money to people's grandparents and people on food stamps, you're like, here you go, this is for your grandparents to continue to live. And here's money for food that you need to survive. And then you're like, what did you spend it on? And they're like, I could literally only spend it on what I need to survive. And you're like, well, I think maybe you should get less. Like, how? That's how we're making decisions here.
Yeah. No, it's not cutting the military. They're locking in increases over the next 2 years because here's the thing that you don't seem to get. We need an $860 billion military budget plus extra contingencies, because if we had a $600 billion military budget, we would immediately be invaded by Argentina. And there goes America. We won't have an America anymore. It's ridiculous. If we had a $150 billion military budget, we would be perfectly fine as a country. We would be at no risk. In fact, we'd be at much less risk of the actual things that threaten Americans' lives, which are not people from Chile. It's diabetes and sickness and homelessness, and those are the things that theoretically the budget could be going towards, but it doesn't, because instead it's being spent by Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, he's giving the money to the people with the nukes. That makes sense.
100%.
He's afraid. Yeah,
which I get it. They have nukes. They're scary.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna move on to our last story of this block, just because I would feel amiss if we didn't talk about this while we have just gone. So why don't we jump into this? The prices of some things have actually begun to fall a little bit over the past few months, but not nearly as much as you might have expected, and not nearly as many different products and services are seeing their prices go down. In fact, some are continuing to go up, even though all those things that we were told over the last year and a half were leading to inflation aren't true anymore. It's weird that the prices aren't dropping. And Apparently, according to the New York Times, get used to it. So they say some of the world's biggest companies have said they do not plan to change course and will continue increasing prices or keep them at elevated levels for the foreseeable future. That strategy has cushioned corporate profits, and it could keep inflation robust, contributing to the very pressures used to justify surging prices. We have a statement from Albert Edwards, global strategist at Societe Generale, who says companies are not just maintaining margins, not just passing on cost increases, they have used it as a cover to expand margins. Hugh Johnston, CFO of PepsiCo, said, I don't think our margins are gonna deteriorate at all. In fact, what we said for the year is we'll be at least even with 2022 and may in fact increase margins during the course of the year. And those are anecdotal, but when you look at the S&P 500 stock index, it's increased its net profit margin from the end of last year, the average company has. And while margins are below their peak back in 2021, it is expected that they will continue to expand in the second half of the year. And that is amazing to me, amazing. It almost seems like the corporations are raising prices because they can, that's why prices are high, not because of Ukraine or because of the pandemic or because of a train derailment or whatever, that it's just the greed of the corporations. And the reason that my mind is so blown is that it is amazing that the New York Times is finally admitting this. It's amazing that we've now just come to the point as a society where we accept that that's what's causing it. Because at one point, I will remind you, there was this Catherine Rampell opinion piece in the Washington Post that perfectly summed up how the status quo, how the establishment responded to people like Bernie Sanders and AOC pointing out that greed was causing inflation. They said it was a conspiracy theory infecting the Democratic Party, specifically Catherine Rampell. That was the title of her op-ed. That the idea that greed is causing inflation was a conspiracy theory infecting the Democratic Party. Now we have a year of wildly inflated corporate profits that have now been locked in, and that is the new status quo. And now it's just accepted. There's nothing that's gonna be done about this. So the New York Times is finally freed up to admit that's what's actually happening. Because we don't expect that anything's gonna be done. What do you think?
The Cassandras of inflation, we're just not listened to. That's the whole thing with Cassandras, right? But the Cassandras of inflation now are also not being like, we told you so, because it's not great to be in this situation. It's too late because we've already had Jerome Powell raising interest rates for months and months, saying that that's gonna address inflation, making the mistake that it was inflation on the supply side. The problem was not that people across the United States of America had more dollars than they knew what to do with, and we saw too many dollars chasing too few goods. It just wasn't the situation, and we know that to be true when we see corporations raising prices simply because they can. How do we know that? It's very basic math. If they had additional input costs, you would not see higher profit margins. That would be cut out of their revenue as a part of the cost. It's not more expensive for them to create the goods and services. They didn't increase wages. There were not additional input costs. It's all profit. It's insanity. And the supply and demand of the market right now, like we would expect if prices went up so high, there would be some people not willing to pay for them and they would drop off. But the things that they're raising prices on are things that we cannot do without. Things like energy, gas to put in our cars so we can go to work, energy so we can heat our homes and not freeze to death in the wintertime. It's food, it's groceries, it's rent, it's stuff that we have no choice but to buy. And then the other things they're raising prices on, they can raise prices on them and then maybe less people will buy them, but they've raised prices such a significant amount that they can cut some costs by making less and still make the same or more amount of money by literally doing less work because their market is smaller, but they're getting away with the prices being so high. It's like a ridiculous economy that works for literally no one but the corporations. And with wages stagnant since the 70s, who's gonna buy your goods and services after a certain point? Like you can't squeeze the workers that much. They're also the consumers. Like they're not gonna be able to afford your products at a certain point. It's unsustainable even for you.
You would think that was a great explanation of it. It is very easy to follow, which is why it has been so frustrating over the past couple of years that everyone in a position of power refused to admit it. Now, it makes sense that they refuse to admit it. They want corporate profits to be higher. The people writing opinion pieces in the Washington Post are not detached from the stock market. The Washington Post certainly isn't. They liked that companies were greedy and were raising prices. They liked that there was a societal excuse for doing that. And it was maybe second only to the frustration that I had from watching our country seem to come to a collective agreement that it's okay to let hundreds of thousands of people needlessly die during a public health crisis. The fact that as this was happening, we had a few politicians like Bernie Sanders who were continually pointing out that there is no justifiable cause for gas prices to be as high as they were. And seemingly, basically every Democrat and every single Republican, many of whom like to pretend that they're anti-elite or whatever because they hate Bud Light, made a million excuses for the oil companies and for the food production companies and all of that. And people suffered. And now it looks like it's locked in for the long haul. It was all incredibly obvious. If you were watching this program, if you were paying attention to what was going on, you knew what was happening. But all the people with the money and the power and the influence wouldn't accept it because they had a financial incentive not to. That sucked. But thank you, New York Times, for catching up to where we were at a year and a half ago. Anyway, with that said, well, any final thoughts before we move on?
No, let's move on. Let's get to the next.
Okay, let's do that. No, let's move on to a break and then we'll get on to the next story. So we're gonna take a quick break and then we're gonna welcome you to Pride Month with the only way that America could. Stick around, we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, let's see what is going on out there. Coos, member for 21 months says, I think DeSantis's knee-jerk impulse to lash out is totally indicative of a person who is insecure and fearful that they're in over their head. Sure, but he's also incentivized to do that because the right loves people who just attack groups that they've been told to hate. Jason P says, can TYT send Jessica to DC so she could break things down to Congress? Her breakdown was excellent. Here's a couple of bucks towards airfare. That would be great.
That would be so fun. I would love to testify.
That would be fun. Are you a Succession person?
So I watched a little bit because I made a TikTok about it, comparing them to the Murdochs, but I haven't actually watched it.
How dare you?
I know.
You pretended
in
your TikTok
I'm a poser.
to know what it was. You, Succession poser. Anyway, there's congressional testimony in that. That was really good. But anyway, Deb Wicks, member for 29 months, says Republicans are the biggest hypocrites. I can't stand listening to them. Everyone is. It just literally everyone, me included, probably Jessica included. I can't attest to that individually, but I'm just sick of the hypocrisy that has become so normalized. It's like it's goal-oriented hypocrisy that is incentivized by enough people to justify it, and I hate it. Anyway, Bay Photo, member for 13 months, says crazy how a demented old man that can't even find his pants can outmaneuver the smart and fiscally conservative Freedom Caucus members, right, Chip? Yeah, I don't know. We didn't really end up debating this, I suppose. Like overall, from your point of view, Biden's performance in all of this, what do you think?
Real bad, real bad. The fact that he said the 14th Amendment, I'll look into it next time. The power that I have to just tell the Federal Reserve or send troops to the Fed and the Treasury and say, all right, you guys, you have to issue the bonds because the public debt shall not be questioned per the Constitution. And it's my constitutional duty to enforce it's my presidential duty to enforce the Constitution, rather. He could have said, you literally have to fund the government. You have to abide by the budget that was passed by the prior Congress. You can't like get a credit card bill and say all the stuff I spent money on, I'm gonna reallocate that to other stuff. Biden could have avoided this whole thing, so not pleased with him.
By the way, if he is going to say, I'll do the 14th Amendment for the next time, get started. You've got a couple of years. What possible excuse do you have to not look into it now? You didn't have an excuse last time, you just waited. That's it, because you didn't want to use it. But now you literally have years and it doesn't look like you're gonna be getting a lot done between now and then anyway. So no, we're gonna be having the same conversation in a couple of years. We'll have slightly different haircuts probably, but other than that, it'll be the same conversation. Anyway, Kide, thank you for the acknowledgement of light. I do appreciate that. Lisa Dodson, member for 29 months, says, can't believe it's been over 2 years. Bo of the Fifth Column did an awesome show on this. I think talking about the debt ceiling. Thank you, that's awesome. Long-haired hippie dragon member for 18 months says, classification doesn't matter under the Presidential Records Act. Just taking any records without NARA approval is illegal. Yeah, but get Trustee to admit that. Anyway, let's let's see, where did that comment go? Oh, Donkey Teeth Bite says cut the military. We totally could. We could cut it in half and have enough military to defend ourselves, invade 2 countries at the same time, and possibly create a permanent military presence on the moon. We'd be perfectly fine.
They could be doing that secretly right now. We don't even know what they spend it on.
We don't know. We don't know. We should probably have an audit, honestly. Anyway, with that said, we've got more to talk about, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna need you to prepare yourself as we launch into this. June is Pride Month. What it's supposed to be is an acknowledgement of the lives and experiences and histories and culture of people in the LGBTQ community. It's supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a time of celebration. Unfortunately, it's also an opportunity for people who utterly despise the LGBTQ community to try to make their life even more of a living hell than they've been doing around the country for the last couple of years. And so prepare yourself. An LGBTQ flag was burned at an elementary school in Southern California this month ahead of a Pride event. Someone broke into Satakoy Elementary School in North Hollywood during the weekend that preceded May 22nd and burned the flag. That's awesome. It's being investigated by LAPD as a vandalism hate crime. And just a reminder, if it wasn't clear there, that happened here. That happened just like 10 miles away or 20 miles away or something. This wasn't in like the deep South or something. This sort of insanity, this constant attacks and harassment happen all over the country. There are no suspects at this time, apparently. There was a flyer that was posted on a social media account named Satakoy Elementary Parents. The account encouraged parents to keep their kids home and to protest against Pride Day Assembly, an inappropriate topic for our kids. Because all of that stuff that they started off this campaign on of they're coming to groom our kids is now just a generalized thing of any acknowledgement of the LGBTQ community in any form, a symbol, a word, a shirt, a comment, all of it is explicitly an attack against our kids at all times because it's way easier to justify this sort of crusade if you pretend that that is the truth. We've got worse, but Jessica, what do you think so far?
Yeah, it's always about the gays are grooming the kids to be gay. Having a rainbow flag means that you're forcing, homosexuality onto children. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Anyone who grew up in the United States of America and is queer, you grow up only watching movies where it's Cinderella getting saved by the Prince Charming. It's always heterosexual relationships. As a woman especially, you're taught that your value comes from how much you make a man happy, and you're taught to aspire to marriage and to be a good wife, and that's like the ultimate success you can have. So this idea that we groom kids to be queer in this country is insane to me. Like, this is why so many members of my community who are queer women don't end up coming out or even realizing that they're queer until their 20s. Like, it's crazy to me that they believe that children are groomed to be queer in this country. Children are groomed to be straight. We're just trying to say you have an option to love whoever you want to love, and that's okay. And that is too much for the right. They're intolerant. That's really what it is. They claim to love civil liberties, but they want to take them away for anyone who's dissimilar from them.
Yeah, look, honestly, while everything that you said was true, I think that a lot of the stuff that the right is constantly protesting against is way less aggressive than even that. Like you said, you have the option to love whoever you want. That might sometimes come up. Generally, it's just, hey, by the way, there are people who love these. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, like why is it that if a rainbow on a t-shirt in Target can make you gay, seeing all of the, all the straight people, seeing all the straight kisses, finding out that your teacher was getting, married in a heterosexual relationship, why doesn't that make you straight? It doesn't make any sense because it doesn't have to make any sense. This is all politically motivated. I want to go to just a little bit more insanity before we end. Let's jump into this.
Bud Light sales are down 25% and Coors Light sales are up 25%. Everybody moved from one brand to another. What happens when you're talking about a universal wave of companies all mirroring the Pride Month celebratory morality? What happens when that happens? How do you fight that? The answer here is going to be a bevy of lawsuits. And this is going to be legislation and lawsuits. Because what we are watching right now is illegal collusion between these companies. I've used the word collusion, but it actually is legal collusion.
Okay, now I understand if it's hard to follow what Ben Shapiro is saying there. He is, after all, talking very fast, and we have been told for years that he's an intellectual gladiator. But just to be clear, what he is saying is that because multiple different companies have engaged in some sort of pride merchandise, that is collusion between them. That this is unfair competition because they're all doing the same sort of thing. And I think that makes perfect sense. I think there will be class action lawsuits, and I think those will be followed by class action lawsuits against every coffee shop selling pumpkin spice lattes. Why exactly are they all doing that? You know, I sometimes late in the year see a lot of pumpkins and a lot of skeletons decorating different businesses, and it kind of seems like they're working together. Honestly, every business that puts up a Christmas tree or has anything like that, they're probably illegally colluding. This is the dumbest argument I've ever heard, and it's coming from Ben Shapiro, who supposedly went to law school, Jessica.
Yeah, I don't know who gave this Keebler Alpha Microeconomics textbook, but he needs to read past chapter 1 so he can learn about oligopolies in this country and what actually it means to run an independent business and make a decision to have certain branding or marketing. It might have nothing to do with another business. Maybe he should read a stats textbook as well and learn about other variables that can influence causal results.
Yeah, or maybe he doesn't believe any of this, and he is caught between a rock and a hard place, which is the rock, I suppose, is him wanting to seem like an intellectual, like a philosopher. He's not just, like an out and out Christian fascist, like a Matt Walsh or whatever. He's like the thinking guy, and yet he desperately needs these people to still love him. So he has to attack the LGBTQ community, but he can't just say it's because he hates them and fears them. He can't do that. So I guess illegal collusion between Target and Bud Light. It doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have to. Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show. Thank you everyone who's been watching and or listening, but we got more to come in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Aftermath, everybody. I'm John Iadarola. She remains Jessica Burbank. Jessica, thank you for being here. Other than appearing on the show, what have you been up to recently?
No, that's a good question. I've been appearing on the other shows as well. A lot of Watch List and Unbossed this week. A lot of debt ceiling talk, a lot of rising, and a lot of Funny Money podcasts. I love the Funny Money podcast. If you want detailed explainers about the debt ceiling and what's going on there, Funny Money podcast, wherever you get them.
Nice. You've been doing it for about a month now? Something like that?
Yeah.
Nice. Everyone, check it out. Okay, everybody, we're gonna read a few of your comments and then we're gonna jump into some more news. Descender Dragon sent it a super chat saying, just hit the bong aggressively and started a walk. Wish me luck. I don't wanna get lost. My favorite host will keep me company, and so will John.
Oh, such a burn.
Damn it. Okay, Delicious Cheese Sandwich says, I would charge him under the Espionage Act, which has a life sentence and only drop the charges if he pleads guilty to other charges. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any thoughts or care about what particular sentences or charges or anything. I just want something that tells me that there are consequences for actions. That's all I've ever wanted. Anyway. Okay, Chris Frederick, member for 29 months, says the Republican Party wants to rule you, not represent you. Bo the Fifth. Yeah, I mean, look, I would counter that by also saying I don't know how many Democrats are like, I just want to represent people. Just send me there and I'll just do what you want. Like, but he's not wrong. Okay, Pitchfork's Dragon says, John, the story the other day about PetSmart selling rainbow milk bones, is the right afraid PetSmart is dog grooming? No, literally one of the women freaking out over PetSmart making your dog gay made a reference to groomers, and it was like totally over her head what she was doing there. Okay. With that said, I think it's probably time for us to jump into some news. I want you all to prepare. There is some insane, vicious fat phobia in this, but buckle up, it's coming.
The first official jabs between DeSantis and Trump have already begun. And Chris Christie is planning to hop into the race next week. Right after he gets a clean bill of health from his trainer at SeaWorld. Something about his blowhole being clogged with fluffernutter.
Not the fluff would say.
Disgusting, the things that they write. But, some say he is presidential and that he's already the candidate most shaped like the Oval Office.
Another fat phobe would say.
Terrible people.
I have to tell you a joke about Christie while we're here. I was giving a speech for him when he was running for governor, and his opponent said that he's too fat to be governor. And I said, well, he may be heavier, but the taxes will be lighter.
Ugh. That was wow. But honestly, you can play that for all of that. The issue, I know what Greg Gutfeld would like. What Greg Gutfeld would like would be to be able to say that everyone who thinks that wasn't funny is just offended or whatever. I don't know, maybe some people watching this are offended. That's not the principal issue with it. It's that like, oh, SeaWorld. That's the first time anyone's made a joke like that. You must be a professional comedian, sir, with a writing staff to be coming up with material like that. It's lazy. It's lazy, and why wouldn't it be? The bar is buried beneath the surface of the earth for his sort of comedy. But anyway, we play that for you to remind you that this is going to be coming. Chris Christie is going to be announcing his presidential bid within a week, I believe. And there are gonna be a lot of attacks like this. Donald Trump already shared a bleat from Roger Stone with this photoshopped image of Chris Christie, who they think is fat, but apparently isn't fat enough for them, which is why they need to pretend that he's fatter than he is. And the thing about this that I wish I could criticize Greg Gutfeld and Roger Stone and Donald Trump on is I wish I could say that they don't measure up looks wise, but they're all such obviously attractive men that I've been disarmed. I can't say anything about Greg Gutfeld being anything other than an Adonis of a man, and Roger Stone obviously is the masculine ideal. And Donald Trump doesn't need to ever exercise, he's just built that way. And so Jessica, I wish that I could attack him, but oh well, I guess we'll have to attack them on substance.
Yeah, he's just not funny. That's the thing. Like, if this was funny, would it be better? No, because we have someone like Chris Christie running against someone like DeSantis, running against someone like Trump. I miss when I used to get to hate Chris Christie for wanting charter schools. Now we have no choice but to hate Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis for potentially descending the country into full fascism. Like, that's the political spectrum we have. But what are they happy about? That someone who is heavier has entered the race and they can make fun of him for that, because why would we ever talk about the consequences of electing the most powerful person in our country? Like, it doesn't make any sense. That's why Fox News is talking about Chris Christie's weight, because none of these guys have a policy platform yet. Chris Christie, we're just speculating, is running. It seems like he's going to run, and he hasn't announced like what he's running on. We don't know what his platform is. DeSantis is making America Florida. Donald Trump is running on Ron DeSanctimonious, other nicknames. And he started the same 2016 rhetoric of hating migrants and wanting to completely scrap the constitutional right to birthright. So what do we have to talk about? All Fox wants to talk about is their weight, because there's no substance to their criticism of any of these folks, or no good policy reason for electing any of these candidates over another.
Yeah, you're right in multiple ways. One, in that none of them are really running on substance, but also to the extent that there is a policy platform, it doesn't meaningfully like differ between them. Like, they're all basically gonna cut taxes, and they're all basically gonna make sure that the EPA doesn't work, and they're all basically gonna demonize immigrants and the LGBTQ community. It's all pretty much the same thing. So why not just mock each other based on your appearance or whatever? But I will use.
Is it possible, John, for us to pull up Dick Morris's clip without the clip that he gave commentary, and he had his books in the background? If we can pull it up silent.
Can we do that?
I want people to we can take a screen grab. I just want people to see the formation of the books behind Dick Morris as he's giving commentary.
I did not notice this.
So, all right, so we go through Greg, but it's really something when we get to all right. Oh, it's cut out here, but when you go to a full shot, pay attention to the red books. What are you doing? Why did he do that?
That is definitely intentional.
These guys are not funny. It's like, how old are you?
Oh God.
It's really, I had to point it out.
Morris is such a weirdo. I oddly enough, I didn't notice that. Well, I guess not consciously. It probably had an effect on me, but anyway, not consciously. So you're 100% right. And by the way, the media, the right-wing media is gonna, of course, love this, because they don't want Republican campaigns to be about policies, because they don't want Republicans, once they get in office, to focus on policy. That's not why they're getting elected. They're getting elected to mostly stop the government from functioning, except for passing 1 or 2 bills to defund education and cut taxes. That's pretty much it. Every time they get into office, it's to do those couple of things and make sure that nothing happens. That's it. But I will also use this as a reminder. Yesterday on the Young Turks with Anna Kasparian, I gave DeSantis advice that I don't personally believe, but it seems true. I said then, the only way you're gonna be able to take down Donald Trump is to viciously attack and humiliate him. And I gave examples that I think were even more vicious than the stuff Greg Gutfeld was saying. And not because I hate it. I don't wanna see any of that sort of stuff. But I said, this is what Republicans like. And in the day, since, we've been reminded of it. This is how they attack each other. And it doesn't matter that it's wildly glass houses. Donald Trump criticizing Chris Christie for the shape of his body it's laughable. He's opening himself up to attack, except that he appears to believe that they're not gonna do it. That Chris Christie's not gonna hit back, Ron DeSantis is gonna hit back, Nikki Haley's attacking Joe Biden, she's certainly not gonna criticize him. And so it's like a one-way underhanded fight. Okay, with that said.
That was beautiful, John.
Thank you. I try. Let's move on to graphic 5, just because it's weird, and then we'll get to some more substance, I suppose. Donald Trump's attacks against Ron DeSantis or Rob DeSantis are very weird generally, but we're about to hit one of the weirdest. It has to do with DeSantis's name. Now, you're probably familiar at this point that relatively recently, a couple years ago, he started changing how he pronounced his last name. So that is true. You can see it in video. He used to call himself DeSantis. Now he calls himself DeSantis, Why exactly is he doing that? It's complicated, I suppose, but that's what he did. It used to be D, now it's duh. And so, of course, you get the ultimate duh from Donald Trump, who bleated, "Have you heard that Rob DeSanctimonious wants to change his name again? He is demanding that people call him DeSantis rather than DeSantis. Actually, I like duh better, a nicer flow, so I am happy he is changing it. He gets very upset when people, including reporters, don't pronounce it correctly. Therefore, he shouldn't mind DeSanctimonious." You see what he did there? He reminded people the fact that he changed his name, but he reversed which way he changed it. And now he's saying everyone should call him the original one. This is literally what a 4-year-old would do to another 4-year-old. Hey, don't call me that. See, he likes to be called that. These are full-grown men. Some of them old. Trump is an old man. And the thing is, see, I'm gonna get them to call you DeSantis again. And he's gonna do this, and DeSantis is not gonna hit him back. It is so pathetic. He humiliates DeSantis, but he gets his money's worth twice over out of it. He does the attack, which humiliates DeSantis. And then when the right-wing base watches that DeSantis has no strength in his response, it humiliates him twice over. This is why DeSantis is not gonna be president, because of the name thing, honestly. What do you think, Jessica?
I thought he used to be DeSantis, and then I recently heard him for the first time say DeSantis. But maybe I have my timeline wrong. It's
it literally doesn't even matter.
No.
But
it doesn't.
It's that he's not gonna defend himself. He's just not going to.
He's not
going to. It's weirdly anti-Italian too at the same time. I don't care. I'm not gonna defend it as an Italian person, but it definitely is. And so he's not defending himself in terms of being Italian either. And then he gets hit again. We're gonna end with one more thing. This is a montage of DeSantis or DeSantis or whatever the hell it is. Take a look at this.
Donald Trump has done a better job of appointing judges, both on the Supreme Court and the courts of appeal, than any Republican president in modern times. Donald Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. He knows how to negotiate. He's a master negotiator. Trump instinctively is tough on China. The strong horse is who they respect. The president's a strong horse. Now look, they're not gonna give him credit. This is all pre-cooked narratives. They have their anti-Trump narrative set.
Trump is spreading that, and he should. He can, because DeSantis, Rob, can I call you Rob? Rob traveled around the country for years with his entire political identity being that he was going to suck up to Trump more than anyone else was. And he did that knowing that he wanted to run for president someday, and yet he did it. And so honestly, I'm not even mad at Trump for spreading this sort of stuff. It makes all the sense in the world. What do you think?
I'm also upset about the anti-Italian American discrimination here. I think maybe what happened there was some kind of survey that was run by the DeSantis campaign, the Romney campaign. And they said, which name can you take more seriously? And I think that's what they went with. I don't think it's how you actually pronounce the name. I don't think that had anything to do with this. I think genuinely they did some kind of marketing scheme because they invest so much money in messaging.
That's true.
Unfortunately, it matters. And I think that's really what went down there. But I don't think he's gonna stand up for himself against Donald Trump. I think what he's gonna do is try and appeal to the party establishment and try and keep Trump's base in his favor. And Trump is making his own base question some of what he says, because at his rallies, his most dedicated supporters, when he hates on Ron, they don't join in and boo about Ron. They don't cheer Trump on when he hates on Ron DeSantis. So what does that tell you? That his base actually is a favorable view of DeSantis. So that's not great for Donald Trump to always hate on him. And DeSantis is smart enough to know that and be like, all right, I'm not gonna cause division here. I'm just gonna slowly absorb Trump's base, which could work in the long run if Ron keeps being the safe candidate for the establishment, which goes a long way in a primary, where the party has a lot to say about what goes down.
But you don't think that months of this sort of mockery is gonna have an effect? that the base won't follow Trump and be like, yeah, you know what? He is ridiculous. He is insane. He is disgusting in the case of the pudding fingers. You don't think that that's going to like wear away?
I don't know. I think it might not matter as much as we think it does, because we've seen in the past, like the 2016 primary with Bernie Sanders and Hillary, where Bernie was the popular candidate, in 2020 as well. And the rigging of the primary process really gave us our candidate. We had the DNC because Hillary was the safe, favorable establishment candidate. They started giving her the victory fund, and she was spending those dollars in the primary before she even clinched the nomination. She was just in cahoots with the party.
That is true, but what if for months, rather than focusing on the millionaires and the billionaires, what if Bernie had put out tweets saying, she wants her name to be Clinton now. I preferred Clinton, but she wants Clinton. Maybe we'd be in a different position.
Yeah, you can't compare apples and oranges here, literal oranges. That's okay.
Anyway, okay, we're gonna move on. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna move on to our H block. So I think time is running a little bit short. We're gonna do that in just one sec. First, though, I want to acknowledge Halvira, who's been with us on Twitch for 2 months. Thank you for that. Punk Jazz Dragon for 35 months. Thank you. 3 Fingers of Puddin'. See, this is how this stuff spreads. People put it as their actual name for 34 months. Thank you. Joan Arasa for 10 months. Says take a picture and make it an NFT. Maybe I will. Thank you. And let's see. Jonah Morton says debt limit is what the USA has agreed to borrow from other sources. As we take on more debt, we pay more in interest, and that takes away from service. So I mean, look, the debt ceiling specifically, as Jessica was pointing out, is not an actual determining factor as to whether we can do that. And the political social construct of constant fights about it, I think, it's intentional. It's a different sort of thing that actually does not determine whether we can, maintain our spending. Okay, with that said, we have to move into one more ridiculous topic to end. I've got, for some reason, I can't figure out what, I've got babies on the mind. So we're gonna talk about parenting as we jump into this. Meghan McCain is apparently putting her foot down. Her kids, who at this point right now are toddlers, will not, over her dead body, ever go to woke colleges. She posted a column on the Daily Mail saying that college degrees are kind of increasingly unimportant at actually guaranteeing bright futures for young people, and says that focusing on social justice or people understanding history, getting how things work, that's all a big waste of time and we shouldn't do it. She says, who in their right mind would willingly subject themselves or their loved ones to hateful, irrational, woke indoctrination? Free market capitalism 101. She will not go on to define exactly how any of this is hateful. Seems perfectly fine with the right waging legislative and social campaigns against these groups. That all, by the way, is not hateful for some reason. She goes on to say, the way things are going in academia today, college is the last place I would pay for my kids to attend. She cited the vile, unhinged commencement address at the City University of New York's law school earlier this month, in which a graduate offering the keynote speech criticized white supremacy in the legal system, as well as Israeli violence and colonization in Palestine. Again, not exactly claiming why those things would be bad to point out, but even if you thought they were, saying that your kids shouldn't go to college because someone at one law school commencement gave a speech you didn't like seems like a bit of a leap. But I don't know, Jessica, what do you think?
I think that I want to debate Meghan McCain on what she thinks the economy is. What is free market capitalism 101? Like, I want it to just be descriptions where she just tells me how she thinks stuff works, and then I respond with how it actually works. And I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun for everybody involved. And yeah, is Brown a woke college? She might think so. But I think the debate will let the American people see what is actually important. Whether you regurgitate the political agenda of neoliberals, that's not actually economics. It's a political agenda. To assume that the government has no role whatsoever in the economy, they absolutely do. They control public spending, for one, that's on everybody's minds lately. And number two, they can adjust interest rates to intentionally keep a proportion of the population unemployed. They can make it more difficult for people to take out loans and start businesses and invest in businesses. They run the economy. what does she think it looks like to have an actual free market? I want to know. I just want to talk, Meghan.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe in an unscripted thing like a debate, you could get to what she actually believes. This is, of course, an op-ed that she wrote, which allows her to, make statements that purport to be what she actually thinks. Like, for instance, saying professors and administrators no longer strive to teach students how to think, but what to think. See, she says that as if that is a principle that she is against, but it isn't. Is she writing op-eds about how literally banning the discussion of race or gender identity or sexualization in classes is very much intended to determine what people think, literally what they can think about? It is trying to determine the bounds of education. That's what's happening in Florida and a number of other states. Why is she not writing op-eds about that? Why is a critical analysis of history not being driven by one Republican governor, but by decades old academia? Why is that the thing that she focuses on? Anyway, look, she can attempt to indoctrinate her kids in whatever ways she wants. She's gonna do that. Most parents are gonna do that. But the only reason I really wanted to talk about this is it makes me sad that more and more parents think that their goal should be to try to block their kids from understanding race or class or gender identity or sexual orientation. Because like one of two things can happen. In, I think, probably a far smaller percentage of cases than they think, it'll work. And they will raise kids that'll be predisposed to be racist and misogynistic and homophobic and transphobic, and that sucks. That sucks for those kids. But in way more cases, it's not gonna work. That's not how these kids are gonna grow up. And so all they're doing is setting themselves up for massive rifts between them and their kids, who are gonna grow up to see their parents as bigoted and small-minded, in the same way that I hope a lot of people who grew up with parents who were, like actively on the wrong side of the civil rights movement and that sort of thing, probably saw their parents too. It's just setting up for broken, hateful, ruined families. I don't know. Again, she's free to do it. She has that parental right. Lots of right wingers do. I just hate it, Jessica. I don't know. What do you think?
But also, like, college age sometimes is 18. Like, what if her kids end up getting a scholarship to these woke universities and they just like go off on their own and are free from Meghan McCain? Like, we've actually seen quite a few high-level conservative folks have kids completely break from their parents. A lot of folks in politics in America, and I think that would be cool. Also, it's just not true that we're not taught how to think, we're taught what to think. Because I think the class that shaped me the most out of college was logic and reasoning. And it's a class that I think Meghan McCain would benefit greatly from taking, as well as Ben Shapiro, who uses his own pseudo logic that he came up with, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that class has helped me break down the conservative logic and what is true and what is not in our politics and policy making more than any other class.
That's awesome. I think you should send her one of the books. I would actually like to take a look at the syllabus, but we should definitely send it to her.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the program today. Jessica, as always, thank you for joining us. Where can people watch more of your work?
Funny Money, TikTok, YouTube, Rising,
Stuff.
QIT, Substack.
Exactly. And so everywhere, basically. People go forth and look for her everywhere. Thank you, Jessica. Have a good day.
John.
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining me as well. You can join me a little bit later on today as I lead us through the first half of TYT's yearly Pride special. Very excited for it. We got some great guests coming up, so I hope to see you there. Also, by the way, you have some homework tomorrow. We're throwing away the garbage, so you can go vote for the Community Garbage Person of the Week at the community tab of our YouTube page at youtube.com/The Damage Report. Can't wait to see who you choose. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.